Welcome. My name is Florence Koendering, and I was the technical advisor to the DataCare Project and a member of Eurochild. I will be presenting the overview of the final findings and recommendations of the DataCare Project, a joint undertaking by Eurochild and UNICEF. With this presentation, we want to give a brief overview of some of the highlights of the DataCare technical report, which you can also find on the website. We will first look at the rationale and the context of the DataCare project, followed by a very brief summary of the methodology. Then we look at the findings of the project, including an overview of the data collected and the indicators we were able to calculate. We will look at comparability of data and of definitions of alternative care provisions. We look at some room for improvement that was found, as well as helpful examples. And then we will look at the 4 recommendations, 2 at EU level and 2 at national level. The DataCare project is not standing on its own. It is connected to the EU commitments to deinstitutionalization and transition to family and community-based care, something which Eurochild and UNICEF also feel very strongly about. The EU has made deinstitutionalization a priority over the past decade and has provided member states with funding and support to help them make the transition to family and community-based care. However, there are still no indicators to measure the progress of the transition within the EU, and there is no consensus on the indicators on children in alternative care internationally either. Plus, there are almost no international reporting obligations, which removes some of the motivation to come to standard indicators for children in alternative care. The lack of indicators and problems with comparable data were also identified in the 2009 mapping of the data of children in alternative care in Europe by Eurochild. The DataCare project was initiated to get a better insight in what was behind this. So the project looked at national administrative systems that produce statistics on children in alternative care. We looked at who collects data, what is being collected, how frequently it is collected, and how it is collected. We also looked at what helped or hindered data comparability and quality in this area. And we looked at possibilities to develop relevant indicators and include them into EU and national monitoring frameworks, and to strengthen statistical systems to produce quality data for the approved indicators. Then we have a look at the framework within which the DataCare project lies, because there is a lot of work ongoing in getting indicators on children in alternative care, including the European Child Guarantee, which was adopted earlier this year and for which the DataCare findings are very relevant. The Child Guarantee is the largest investment in children in EU history, and it specifically mentions children in alternative care as one of the target groups, and it envisages the development of a monitoring framework. Our findings can be very useful to ensure that the monitoring framework developed will be effective. The feasibility study for the Child Guarantee also gave information on the data systems of the countries involved, but DataCare looked at more countries and dived deeper into how these data systems, particularly on children in alternative care, worked. There is also the Conference of European Statisticians that have started a task force on statistics on children, adolescents, and youth. UNICEF is part of this task force. They review the definitions and indicators available on violence against children, children with disabilities, and children in alternative care. UNICEF is also behind the Transmonet network, a network of 29 countries in Central Europe, in Central Asia and Eastern Europe, to promote better data for children. The database has collected data on children, including children in alternative care, since 1989, the fall of the wall and of the Soviet Union. So they have gathered over 30 years of data on children in their database, and currently they are revising the indicators based on the wealth of experience to strengthen the data quality and comparability. And Europe is not the only place where people are looking at indicators and trying to find a consensus on what indicators need to be used for monitoring of children in alternative care. Together with UNICEF, the Better Care Network brought out a manual of indicators on child protection in 2009. And currently they are behind the platform, the Transforming Children's Care Global Collaborative Platform, within which there are task forces and working groups looking at reaching a global consensus on a core set of standard indicators on children in alternative care, among other global initiatives. So the DataCare Project falls within a large range of different projects aiming at building monitoring frameworks on alternative care and establishing consensus on indicators. What the DataCare Project did was to map data systems on children in alternative care in 28 European countries. That's the EU 27 and the UK in 2020 and 2021. The aim was not to map data, though data was collected in the course of investigating the data systems. There was no primary data collection as we looked at the data available, the data that was being collected by the administrative data systems. We also asked for the questionnaires that are used in administrative data collection to get an insight into how data are collected and to be able to compare the data that are collected to data that are made public. The tools that we used for this were the DataCare Research Protocol that outlines in more detail the rationale and the methodology of the project. There was the national template, which through a list of questions and working tables provided guidance on the information we were looking for. And we also provided a glossary. These tools can be downloaded on the DataCare webpage of the Eurochild website. Research was undertaken by the research team, which initially was headed by Gasper Veit as Senior Research Coordinator until February 2021. He was instrumental in designing the methodology. The research team also included Maria Herzog, Chief Scientific Advisor and Chair of the Research Advisory Group, Kieran O'Donnell of the Eurochild Secretariat, and me, Florence Gundring, an independent consultant. And from March, we were joined by Anja Telchik from UNICEF. Throughout, we were given support and steering from Jana Hainsworth of Eurochild and Aaron Greenberg from UNICEF ICARO. We were also supported by the Research Advisory Group, which comprised of 11 external experts and Eurochild members in the field of children in alternative care from different organizational and sectoral backgrounds. Research Advisory Group members provided feedback and reviews of the proposed research protocol and national template, as well as on the final report. And we are indebted to more than 50 national correspondents from 23 countries who were instrumental in providing the information from the different country contexts, guided by the national. As mentioned, we only had national correspondents in 23 of the 28 countries. We were unable to identify national correspondents in Austria, Estonia, Latvia, Luxembourg, and Slovakia. However, the research team was still able to compile information and data on these countries. In the case of Estonia, which had been part of the feasibility study for the DataCare project, a lot of information had already been gathered. And for the other countries, we used national statistical websites or reports and the Transmonet database to get information. And for Luxembourg, we also used the latest report to the Committee on the Rights of the Child. The DataCare project was guided by the research questions, which have been on the screen for a while now, so I'm sure you've read them, and we will move on to the findings. We were not surprised to find that 28 countries surveyed have developed diverse alternative care and data systems over the past decades, which have their own histories and are rooted in local and culture and tradition. Surveyed are reforming or have recently reformed their alternative care data systems. This indicates a heightened awareness in Europe of the need for better data on children in alternative care and an interest in working towards stronger data systems. Here are two of the tables from the technical report. In the first table, you see the legal framework for the production of national statistics on children in alternative care, where we found that in 6 countries, there were detailed requirements of data to be collected and the frequency at which it was to be collected in legislation. While in 2 countries, we were unable to find any mention of a requirement to collect data on children in alternative care. Most countries fall in between those 2 variations, with some mention for the need to collect data, but without specific requirements. In some cases, it was as much as relevant data is to be collected. In 2 countries, the national correspondence indicated that there were robust laws on data collection on children in alternative care, but that the implementation was not of the same standard. In table 2, you see who is responsible for the national administrative data collection on children in alternative care. As you will have noticed, more countries are shown here than were surveyed. This is because many countries have more than one organization or department involved in data gathering. In some countries, this has been shown to be problematic, with data fragmentation and gaps and overlaps making it hard to establish whether all children in alternative care are covered. Later on in the presentation, under helpful examples, we will see how some countries do manage to make this work. All countries surveyed collect some data on children in alternative care, and we found that a lot more data is being collected than is published. Some of the data we received had to be requested because it is publicly on various variables. We found that all countries use a disaggregation by age of the individual child, usually through date of birth or a personal identification number with the date of birth embedded, or where the child is not the unit of statistics. Questionnaires would provide an overview of ages 0 to 7 in individual years and ask for each year how many children of that age are present in a provision. We also found that data is disaggregated by sex in all countries. And most countries disaggregate by disability status, though in some countries this can be a very basic binary question of, is there a disability or not? In 2 countries, we found that it is prohibited to collect data on disability status, which is indicated in legislation. Many countries disaggregate data by reason of entering alternative care. 9 countries did not collect any data on that. Having data on this provides an insight into how effective prevention of unnecessary family separation is, and might give an insight into what might be needed to improve this. Who made the decision to place the child in alternative care was a disaggregation variable used in 19 countries. 18 of them also looked at the question whether a judge was involved in the decision. And almost all countries disaggregate data by the destination upon leaving care, of which 24 countries look at whether children go back to their families. This indicates whether reintegration in with the family is prioritized, as is required by the UN guidelines on alternative care for children. Then we get to the overview of the total numbers of children in alternative care. While we talk about a total number, in fact, it's an indication and not the actual total number. There are limitations on the data comparability, which already is shown by the fact that we have not just children in residential care and children in formal family-based care, but also children in other alternative care. This other category includes children who are in facilities that are considered to be alternative care in some countries, but not in others, or children who are in provisions where it is not clear whether they are in residential or in family-based care. This could be either because the definition that is provided is very vague, or because the data is given at a very high aggregate level and it is not possible to parse the two. So the children in other alternative care really should be divided over children in residential and children in formal family-based care to complete those numbers. So even with this, we still do not have the actual total numbers because there's also an issue with the completeness of data. We know that in some countries, not all children are included in the total numbers of children with alternative care. This includes children with disabilities in certain forms of residential care. In some countries, it includes unaccompanied minors. And in some countries, it is not clear whether all children in non-state-run care are included among the children in alternative care. We also have a breakdown per country with sources for the data and the limitations for each country, which can be found in the technical report. We found that data are available for a basic set of relevant indicators to measure progress in deinstitutionalization and transition to family and community-based care. Here you see the 3 of the 4 indicators for the first 13 countries. The following 14 countries will be shown on the next slide. Austria is not included here because we were unable to find stock data in the official statistical reports, and we did not have a national correspondent in the country to help us find this data. We found that it is possible to calculate and publish on the following 4 indicators, 3 on this page, both at national and at EU level. In blue, you see the rate of children aged 0 to 17 in alternative care at a specific point in time per 100,000. In orange is the rate of children aged 0 to 17 in residential care at a specific point in time per 100,000. And in gray, you see the rate of children aged 0 to 17 in formal family-based care at a specific point in time per 100,000. When we talk about a specific point in time, ideally, we would like to see data from every country on the same moment, the same date. We were unable to find this. All national correspondents provided data for the most recently available year, but this was not always the same year. The majority of countries provided data for 2019, and 2018 and 2020 were also often represented, while 3 countries provided data for 2017. These are the next 14 countries with the same 3 indicators, the rate of formal family-based care, rate of residential care, and the rate of alternative care. To go back to the specific point in time, apart from the years, there's also a difference in indicator date between different countries. Most countries use the 31st of December as their indicator date. But we've also seen the 31st of March, 31st of July, the 1st of May, and the 1st of November as indicator dates used by countries. Then we come to the fourth indicator, the percentage of children in residential care of the total number of children in alternative care at a specific point in time. As you can see, there is a great variety here as well, which goes all the way from Malta with 5.5% to Portugal with 95%. As mentioned, because the other alternative care category includes some residential care, in some countries, these percentages are actually somewhat different from what is shown here, but we weren't able to parse that further and include it. The DataCare Project has shown that it is possible to report on the rate number of children in different alternative care systems in a comparable, more or less uniform way at the higher aggregate level. When talking about comparability, the ideal is identical definitions or exact alignment, but that is not an essential requirement. The goal is for concepts and indicators to be broadly comparable, so close enough in meaning and definition to allow meaningful comparisons and overviews. And that is what we have found exists. The term alternative care or a close equivalent was found not to be widely used at the national level in Europe. We found only 10 countries that have a term equivalent to alternative care that is used in legislation and in official discussions on the topic. Instead, most countries use country-specific terms for residential and foster care in policy discussions and legislation. If clear definitions and regulations are in place, this does not have to be a problem. However, those are still lacking or weak in various countries. As we saw in Table 1, few countries have strong legislation on administrative data gathering, and we also found that official definitions of alternative care and its provisions are not always available. When this is the case, having a term equivalent to alternative care might help comparability at the higher aggregate level. The DataCare Project found that while comparability is possible at the higher aggregate level, as shown in the graphs, at the lower aggregate level, it is not. The subdivision of types of foster care and types of residential care are very diverse across 28 countries and do not allow for international comparison. We found room for improvement, which is not a surprise because there always is room for improvement. We found that the questions listed here cannot be comprehensively answered in all countries. These questions are whether care is genuinely necessary and suitable, how effective are prevention, family support, and gatekeeping systems, services in preventing unnecessary separation and family reintegration. Is institutional or residential care replaced by other forms of residential and family-based care? And are there definitions separating different forms of residential care? These definitions separating different forms of residential care are particularly problematic when it comes to being able to tell apart small group homes and institutional facilities in the data. Currently, in most countries surveyed, this is not possible. And without that, it becomes very challenging to monitor progress in deinstitutionalization and transition to family and community-based care. And the final question, what is the quality of care and what are the outcomes with regards to development, health, education, and well-being of children who have been in alternative care? All of this information is important for transparency and for informed, effective decision-making. Here we find a brief summary of some of the things that have been mentioned already the key gaps that were found in the data. So not all countries cover all children in residential care. For example, children with disabilities in therapeutic or educational residential care who are not at risk in their own family are often excluded, as are sometimes children in transition or crisis shelters or in non-state-run residential care. The existence of blurred categories also limits comparability. These blurred categories are the other alternative care, where it is not clear if it is residential or family-based, or if it is called alternative care in some countries, but not in others, such as, for example, correctional facilities, respite care, and placement with the child's own family. There is regularly a limited or absent legal framework, and there is a lack of systematic data collection on poverty as a reason for entering care. Countries that do not collect this data on poverty are unable to monitor whether poverty continues to be a key factor pushing children into alternative care, particularly children from disadvantaged backgrounds. And this is relevant for the monitoring of the child guarantee. We also found helpful examples, however. Meaningful national overviews at higher aggregate levels were found in centralized and even in decentralized countries. For example, Spain produces uniform national statistics based on the data from 19 autonomous regions with diverse alternative care and data systems. This can be an example for other decentralized countries, but it can also form a model for EU-level reporting on 27 diverse national systems. As shown in Table 2 earlier, many countries have more than one organization mandated to collect administrative data, and this can cause problems. However, in several countries, cooperation and communication between different organizations charged with data gathering helps to get more out of the data gathered and avoids the fragmentation and duplication of work that is a risk of having more agencies involved. Examples of these were found in Flanders in Belgium, in Ireland, Malta, and England and Northern Ireland in the UK. This cooperation and communication can be extended to sectors like health and education with good track records on data gathering. Cross-sector and cross-country communication and cooperation enables mutual learning and support. When it comes to strengthening data systems, national statistical offices are among the main producers of national social statistics, including comparable EU social statistics. They are thus uniquely placed to play a crucial role in developing and defining national indicators on children in alternative care and supporting data providers in strengthening their data systems to assure quality data. That brings us to the recommendations. 4 recommendations, 2 at EU level and 2 at national level. The first one at EU level, the European Commission and the Social Protection Committee, the Indicator Subgroup, are developing a common monitoring framework to measure progress in the implementation of the European Child Guarantee. This provides an opportunity to adopt indicators that measure member states' progress towards deinstitutionalization and the transition to family and community-based care. They can integrate these indicators into the existing set of EU indicators on social protection and social inclusion. There are 4 relevant and interlinked indicators for which countries across Europe already collect data that are largely comparable, as we just saw. These indicators can form the basis for the process of indicator development and definition led by the indicator subgroup. The indicators are as followed. To summarize the first 3, the rate of children aged 0 to 17 in alternative care, residential care, and formal family-based care at a specific point in time per 100,000. And the fourth one, the percentage of children aged 0 to 17 in residential care of the total number of children in residential care at a specific point in time. As these indicators are adopted, work with EU member states needs to continue to improve data comparability and quality with a view to arrive at common definitions and harmonize other metadata across the EU. The process can build on the work and findings of the DataCare Project, as well as other work done at EU and global level. The second EU recommendation, the European Commission, through its European Statistical System, can provide EU member states with the guidance and support needed to assess the maturity of their data systems on alternative care. This will help member states examine their ability to collect, analyze, and report comparable data of good quality on children in alternative care, and to plan and budget actions that strengthen those components of the data systems that need improvement. The European Commission can further provide national authorities with the space for mutual learning and exchange in this area. This can include exchange on good practices and exchange with other sectors with more established data systems, like health and education. These spaces can be created, for instance, through the European Social Policy Network, the Social Protection Committee, and/or the framework of the peer review on social inclusion of children in alternative care. Then we come to the first recommendation at national level. Governments can assess the maturity of their data systems on children in alternative care, identify the components that need strengthening, and include system strengthening actions in the relevant national action plans that are costed and funded. Within the EU context, governments can include actions to strengthen their data systems on children in alternative care in the national action plans that they are developing for the implementation of the European Child Guarantee. Governments can include the indicators mentioned in the monitoring and evaluation frameworks for their national action plans to ensure a common approach across EU countries to tracking progress on social protection and social inclusion of children in alternative care. The second recommendation at national level, in the assessment and planning processes to strengthen their national data systems on children in alternative care, governments can pay particular attention to the following points, reflecting the main findings of the DataCare Project. A sound legislative basis for collecting, analyzing, and publishing data on children in alternative care. Having a central agency with a clear mandate to develop and define country-specific and internationally comparable indicators, such as those mentioned, to measure progress in deinstitutionalization and transition to family and community-based care, and a mandate to collect and manage data from across all regions and all relevant sectors to produce the agreed set of statistics on children in alternative care and to assure data quality. Governments can pay attention to make sure that all children in residential and informal family-based care are counted and included in statistics. This may require a mapping or census of children in residential care and a count of children in family-based care, for instance, through the population census or other methods. And to make sure that data on children in residential care are disaggregated by children in small group homes, in institutional facilities, and in other types of residential care, with clear definition distinguishing each from the others. Continuing the second recommendation at national level, governments can pay attention to having the individual child as a unit of statistical data collection to enable longitudinal tracking and to make issues like children included in multiple provisions at once and readmission visible in the data. Data on children in alternative care being systematically disaggregated with a view to leave no one behind and to enable governments to analyze, for example, trends across different population groups and residential inequalities. Disaggregation variables to consider include sex or gender, age, geographical location, and where possible, disability, disaggregated by type, and citizenship. Finally, statistics produced on children in alternative care, including the data used to produce the statistics, are made accessible to researchers and other key stakeholders for secondary analysis and research, as well as for monitoring, evaluation, and decision-making in line with national laws and the European Statistics Code of Practice. Thank you very much for your time and interest. If you would like to know more about the DataCare project and its findings, you can download the policy brief, the country overviews, and the technical report on the website, as well as the DataCare research protocol, the national templates, and a glossary. Thank you very much.